guys. In this video, we're going to be looking at creating a different type of chart using Auron, a bit more of a complex one. The one that we're going to be creating is going to be a hierarchical clustering tree chart. So this is a bit more of a complex way to visualize data in Auron. So our first step is to select the area that we want to look at. In this case, I have chosen Melbourne City as our chosen selected area to analyze, which you can see outlined faintly in red here. And our next step is to go into the Tools button here in the Analyze tab. And then select the Charts tab under the Groups panel. And in the Available Items panel, we're going to select the Hierarchical Clustering Tree Chart, which is this one here. Now, before we go into this one, we first need to browse for the data that we wish to put into here. So we're just going to exit this and we're going to go browse in our data panel. In here, we're going to use the keywords. We're going to look at income inequality and financial stress in the Melbourne City precinct, and we're going to go search. So this is the option that comes up. And in here, we're going to select all attributes because we want to choose from a range of different data points. So we're going to select this little checkbox up here, which automatically selects all the attributes in this data set. And we're going to go add. And our data will be added. Once we've done this, we'll just click the little exit close button here and we'll close this again. And what we do now is go back into the Tools button in the Analyze tab, into the Charts tab under the Groups panel, and go into the Hierarchical Clustering Tree Chart. Hard to say that word. So here we choose our dataset input. So we're going to select and put in our new dataset that we've just browsed and downloaded. And now we're going to select our variables. So we're going to choose the Gini coefficient. We're going to choose the no access to emergency money, the forward and night out data, the poverty rate data, the disposable income data. So we'll just get that one. There we go. So once I've selected all those, we then have to choose our distance metric, and we're going to choose the Euclidean, not quite sure how it's pronounced, but we're choosing this one. Choosing complete for our cluster metric. For our observation labels, we're going to choose the SA2 ID. And we're going to call this Indicators of Income, Inequality, and Financial Stress. So we're going to look at how these are indicators of financial stress. So essentially a hierarchical clustering tree chart shows us the similarity between, in this case, different indicators. And the closer they are on a chart, the more similar these types of indicators are. So it's a good way to kind of get you get a quantitative view of the data, you get the metrics, but also a bit of a qualitative view on it too, looking at comparisons and whatnot. So we've labeled it, we've got a chart title, and we're going to go add and run. So starting the workflow, that's great. We'll give it a bit so it can load. All right, and then our hierarchical clustering tree chart is ready to view. So we'll go display, and here it is. And once we've made our chart, we can then exit this, and we can always click again onto our chart to take a look at it if we ever need to afterwards. So these are the different indicators. And these are percentages. So what we're going to do is just change some of the ways this is visualized. By selecting the Analyze and the Hierarchical Clustering Tree chart in the Analyze panel. And here we're just going to choose the observation label to be the SA2 name. So this will give us the name of what we're actually looking at. So let's go update and run. And this should be able to make the chart a little easier to interpret. All right, let's go display. There we go. So here now we can see that it's referring to places like South Yarra, East Melbourne, Docklands, West Melbourne, etc. So essentially, the way this hierarchical tree chart works is that it's just a way to cluster information. So it's essentially drawn connections between all these different indicators of income inequality and financial stress. It's taken that metric data, and as it's gone up this hierarchy, it's connected in this case, the suburbs that have the most similar data first. It's connected them. So in this case, it's South Yarra and East Melbourne. They've got the most similar data. Docklands and West Melbourne. And you've got Flemington, Racecourse and South Bank as the next two closest. And then the next kind of hub is Melbourne and Kensington. And then eventually this Melbourne-Kensington cluster becomes matched up with North Melbourne as those kind of become closer. And then eventually, we can see here Docklands and Melbourne, Flemington Racecourse and South Bank become another cluster in this section here. And they eventually cluster up with South Yarra and East Melbourne to form another kind of precinct. And then we have one big number here overall indicating the income inequality and financial stress. The Gini coefficient, which is one of the variables here, is a coefficient that determines inequality and that sometimes can be determined as a percentage. So you can assume that 53% kind of shows there's a balance between equality and inequality amongst all these different suburbs as one big cluster of Melbourne. So this is a really good way to kind of start to cluster information, and this is a tedious process manually. So it's pretty great that Auren is able to do this automatically for us. The only issue is with these kind of hierarchical tree charts is that the more data you put in, the more crazy this gets, and it's a lot harder to read. So the legibility and the readability, the user friendliness of this kind of chart is not great, but it's able to cluster some information on suburbs, which is helpful when you're looking at data of specific determinants of, say, health or mental health, physical health in specific suburbs, like what we're doing for our research project. So, helpful tool to know. So that's how we create a hierarchical tree chart in Auren using data for income inequality and financial stress. So the next video is going to be looking at a 3D scatter plot in Auren and how we can go about making that. So I will see you guys in that video.